Welcome to Fibromyalgia Talks. I am your host, Nisi Edwards. And on today's show, I have a special guest. His name is Len Sellers. He is the owner of Real Result Fitness, and he has 40 years of experience with lifting and fitness. He is also a former national powerlifting champion, and he also has helped design functional rehab programs for those recovering from injuries. So welcome, Len, to Fibromyalgia Talks. How are you doing today?
Good. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for coming. You came a long way, all the way from Kenosha, Wisconsin.
Not that far, but
Well, for some people, it is. But I'm so glad you came. So you have a wealth of experience, 40 plus years of experience. So how did you get started in fitness?
well, I think probably like everybody, I just wanted to work out, and it went from there. I was a paratrooper in the Army, and I met a bunch of power lifters, and that I started competing. And for a long period of time, and through my 20s, that was really my thing.
Okay.
That's what my life kind of revolved around. And my first wife was an athletic trainer, and she did rehabilitation, and she did work hardening, helping people get back to work from injuries. So people would have these injuries. So we worked together, and she'd be, well, this muscle group is weak. What would someone have to do to strengthen that so we could expedite getting them back to work? So that's kind of where my experience with the whole rehab came about. And
Okay.
we would just, and people would come to us and be like, well, how'd you come up with that? Well, that's the weak muscle, and this would be the exercise to kind of strengthen that.
Now, when you say powerlifting, so what exactly is powerlifting?
Well, unlike Olympic lifting that you see on TV in the Olympics, that's overhead lifting. Powerlifting is 3 lifts, which is the squat, the bench, and the deadlift.
Okay.
And those are the 3 lifts that comprise, and then the total is what determines the winner
Okay. So the sum total of each one of those
of the 3 lifts.
of the 3. Okay. And what led you down that direction for powerlifting?
Well, I was playing football, and I hurt my ankle and couldn't play football anymore. So I just was in the gym, and I knew all these people who were power lifters, and they said, you want to go to your first meet? And that was 36 years ago, and I competed for about 8 or 9 years, and I won the nationals in 1991, and then life and business kind of got in the way, and I quit competing.
Okay. Now, I'm curious, are there any female powerlifters?
There are. Actually, my first wife was
Awesome.
a very good power lifter, and so probably more so today. If you go back 35 years, there weren't a lot of women doing it, but a lot more today.
I've seen a lot of female bodybuilders.
That was another one that was actually pretty rare years ago, and it's evolved.
That's awesome. So tell me about your journey with wellness.
Well, I was working out, and like everybody, I was working out, but I wasn't working out serious anymore because I really wasn't competing, and it was on and off. But then in 2004, I ruptured my quadricep tendon, and I was in excruciating pain, and they told me I might need to use a cane or something to walk for the rest of my life. And I was like, at that time I was heavy, and I was like, okay, I'm going to have to get back in shape, and I'm going to have to get strong, because when you have injuries, muscle is like shock absorbers. They absorb the punishment versus the joint or the ligaments and tendons. So I got serious about it. I actually lost. I mean, right now I'm 40 pounds lighter than I was, but at the time I actually got down to where I was 60 pounds lighter than I was after the injury. And so that's kind of where it all started. And then people started coming to me, hey, if I want to do this, or what about dieting, or what about this, or what about that? And it's ironic, the guy that I beat in 1991 for the Nationals, he found me on social media out of nowhere, and he started doing the same thing, because everybody was coming to him, and he's, he says, I didn't do it for a long time, but I love this stuff, and people are, coming, and what do I need to do? And everybody's goals are very different. It's one of the problems in commercial gyms. People are either bodybuilders or wannabe bodybuilders, and they want everybody to want to do that. And in reality, that's not what everybody wants to do. Some
True.
people, if they lost 25 pounds, that would be just
Be
like,
ecstatic.
that'd be like winning Mr. or Ms. Illinois bodybuilding
Right.
contest to them. So that's one of the problems. Well, I want to push everybody, and that's not what everybody wants to do. And people have limitations, and particularly as you get older, most people have injuries of some sort that life has dealt them, and you have to work around those types of things.
That's true. And what bothers me sometimes when I go to the gym is I want to use the word cookie cutter approach. And I say that because having fibromyalgia and another type of arthritis, I have physical limitations. And oftentimes what happens to me is that when I go to the gym, I'll say, do you have experience working with someone with these types of symptoms? And they'll say, oh, I work with all types of people, and the same thing that we do for them, you can do it and you'll be fine. And that really bothers me because sometimes I don't think they really, truly understand me in terms of what I'm living with.
That's probably true, but it's not just that. It's not understanding limitations in general.
Absolutely.
You don't have to necessarily have a disorder.
True.
Maybe you've broke your wrist twice, or you've had back surgery, or you've had a lot of shoulder problems or something, and it limits it. I mean, maybe you've got range of motion or impingements or something, and there's exercises you can do to get around that. But one of the big problems I think with that is that a long time ago, because I'm old, we didn't have equipment in the gym. You went in the gym, gyms were very small. They were loaded with lots of free weights and
True.
bars and dumbbells. And if you go in a gym today, they're huge
Yes, they are.
because they have 100 pieces of equipment. We didn't have equipment in those days. Nobody made it. I mean, unless somebody was good in a machine shop, there wasn't a lot of people making equipment. Well, today everything is this equipment. And you just get in it and push, you pull, you do whatever the machine's supposed to do. Well, not quite. It's a little more complicated. Next, people have bad form. But you have a generation of people who never learned how to do those motions because they didn't have to.
That's true.
So some of the things like balance and stuff, and you learn what that stress is. You don't have to do that anymore because the machines, there's no balance involved in them. And that's, of course, why gyms have gotten so big, is they might have 100 pieces of equipment, as where in 1981 you might have had 3 pieces of equipment in a gym if you were lucky. And it just didn't exist. So a lot of people don't have experience with all of these variations of the lifts because the machines have taken that away.
And this can be very overwhelming.
Well, and everybody's got an idea. One of the reasons I like to train people one-on-one is you could have Arnold Schwarzenegger training you. Somebody's going to come up and say, why are you doing that exercise? See, I do this exercise. Now, they have no interest in why you do it. They're trying to affirm why they think this exercise or this way is the best way. And reality is, you have 40 years, I've done pretty much every workout there is to do. And I still change exercises and stuff. And you find certain things work for you and other things don't work. For example, there's an exercise called a skull crusher. It's one of the best for your triceps. I cannot do it.
So what is that?
Well, you basically would lay on a bench and bring the weight down to your head and
Okay.
push up. If I do that, I have tendonitis in my elbows almost as fast as I do it. If I do that heavy, my elbows will hurt so bad I can't sleep. That exercise I don't do. Now, that's not to say somebody else couldn't do it because they
Right.
have healthy elbows. All the years of abuse, mine, they cannot do that exercise. And you're like, oh, that's a great exercise. It is a great exercise, but if you have bad elbows,
It's not a good one for you.
it's not one you want to do, so you do another exercise. And people say, oh, well, if you do all, you have 2 groups of people in the gym today. You have people who, they work out, they look great, so everybody says, well, they must know everything. Then you have people that are educated, they don't look like they work out, but so everything is scientific. Well, this, activates 6% more muscle, but if you have a limitation, it doesn't matter, because the hardest thing about working out is creating a habit. And you cannot create a habit if you're constantly hurt and have to take off 3 weeks.
That's
4
true.
weeks, go to the doctor, ice, taking all kinds of meds to try to take down inflammation. And so if you're constantly being hurt, you'll never create that habit, because what'll happen? Your elbows hurt, so you go to the doctor. What do they tell you? Go take 4 weeks off.
That's true.
Start up again in 4 weeks. Well, how many people can do that? They're just like, and they don't do it. So you have to create the habit, and the secret to the habit is don't get hurt.
And sometimes that's hard because sometimes when you say get hurt, getting hurt sometimes is not so much an injury as a chronic illness.
Yes. I, my second wife had fibromyalgia, so I have experienced that. In her case, it was her hands we always had to work with because her hands bothered her. But sometimes that's also interesting because people will say, well, my neck hurts and it's my fibromyalgia. Well, then you look at posture and you say, okay, is it the posture and the lack of the muscles that are triggering the fibromyalgia, or is it the other way around? So it's a chicken or the egg type thing. And a lot of times that's what it is. It's something it's a deficiency or a muscle imbalance. You get that a lot with people who are gymnasts because they overdevelop their chest and they're rounded like this, but the back isn't strong enough to counter the chest.
Oh,
And they
I
have
see.
constant neck problems. They're just in agony. And what they have to do, you have to balance the muscles out because when you're a gymnast, everything is pushing,
Balance, yes.
but you're not pulling anything. So you get this tremendous, I mean, it's real apparent in men because they almost look funny because their shoulders are so developed and they're rounded.
I've observed.
That's
I've
what
seen that,
happens
yes.
is the muscles pull because this one's too big for this one. And that's something you can correct and help eliminate that problem. Of course, you can't just do it in 2 days
No.
because you didn't create the problem in 2 days, so you can't fix the problem in 2 days. But that was some of the stuff that what my first wife, who was a trainer, was all those functional exercises and getting people back to work. They got hurt doing this. What caused that? And what do we need to fix so that they won't re-injure themselves?
I sustained a knee injury about 2 to 3 years ago. I was in the gym, and I think it was the leg press, and I started feeling pain in my. It felt like it was in the kneecap. And the person that was working with me, I says, "Oh, I got pain in the kneecap," and they says, "Okay, we're gonna reduce the weight," and it just kept flaring up. So now I've noticed sometimes when I go into the gym, I can still feel that twinge, sometimes in the knee, and then I'll stop because I feel like, okay, I don't want to overdo it, exacerbate it, and make it worse. And maybe that's not the exercise for me.
That's pretty common. Things like if you've got knee problems, things like leg extensions, you can't do those. Those are really hard on your knees. So if you're nice and healthy, maybe it's okay. But if not, so there's other exercises you can substitute that work it in a different way. Without ever having seen you do that, I have a feeling that what's happening is the position you're in is your knees up over your ankle, up towards your toes. And that puts a tremendous amount of stress on your knee. So
Okay.
you'd want to work towards an exercise where your knee is staying fixed over your ankle, and that may in fact fix that problem. So it's one of those limitations that you can't. People say, oh, it's great exercise. Yeah, but it's not a great exercise for you. That's all.
True. What I've been doing now is they have a piece of equipment called the New Step.
Okay.
To me, it's like an exercise bike, and I'll do that. But again, sometimes I'll get that pain right in the kneecap,
Have you ever had it looked at? Had the good doctor tell you what the verdict is on it?
They've looked at it and they said they couldn't find anything.
Oh, it's because sometimes you got like little micro tears in there. I've got, because of the imbalance I had when I hurt this leg, I was helping somebody move and I tore up cartilage in this because this leg just wouldn't go. So I was using all this leg pulling stuff upstairs, and so now this knee, it makes all kinds of funny noises and all. So I don't really have any pain, but again, I have to watch exercises that I do. Unfortunately, that's how it goes. So when you see all these words, well, do this, do that, do this. Well, that's assuming you don't have shoulder problems, elbow problems, knee problems, and then you have to just substitute something. And certain exercises, you can try them and say, no, that just doesn't work. And then you just discard it and
Try something else.
till you find something that'll work. And of course, the argument is, well, it's not as good, but it's the best you can do with your situation.
True. I'm glad you said that because I have a support group. We have an online support group, That's, many different countries, not just the U.S. Then we have a local community support group. And one of the biggest questions that comes up all the time is a lot of people with chronic pain feel that they shouldn't work out because it hurts. Now, based upon my experience, if I don't work out, I just feel like everything is just tightening and locking up, and that I have to move to keep things loose. And many have disagreed with me and said that you shouldn't be, working out.
Well, and no matter who you are, working out hurts.
Yes.
That's the problem. Everybody's always looking for workouts that are really great and they're really simple and easy and they don't hurt. But that's not
Right.
how it works. So a lot of it, you have to look at what the condition is. And when you say hurt, like something like fibromyalgia, you can get flare-ups.
Yes.
But you're not structurally damaging anything.
And see, I think they don't realize that.
It hurts, but you're not tearing the muscle or damaging. Now, in cases of certain types of arthritis and all that's different. You're putting a lot of pressure on the joint, and so you got to be careful because then you can actually damage something.
Would that be like RA, for example?
Mm-hmm.
What
Yeah,
about
like rheumatoid.
osteoarthritis?
Well, in osteo is, it's because I got lots of that. It kind of hurts. You kind of, after 40 years of lifting, you get used to a lot of pain. So what a lot of people would consider just excruciating pain is, I worked out really hard last night. It was hard to fall asleep because my shoulders and my arms hurt so bad. I couldn't get comfortable. So I was up until, I don't know, I think it was 1:30 in the morning before I was able to finally go to sleep. I don't consider that that's part of life,
Right.
for me.
Par for the course, yes.
It's like I worked out really hard, and sometimes you're really stiff, and that happens. But a lot of times when you don't move, what you do is you build up scar tissue. And a lot of times you have to break that up. And
That sounds painful.
hurts.
Yes.
It really does. And that's what a lot of rehab is when you come back from knee surgery or something. You build up scar tissue because you can't move. And you got to get through it. When I hurt this leg, the knee was about, that big.
That sounds so painful.
And I couldn't get out of it. And what I had to do is I had to get out of bed, roll around on the floor, and get my legs and walk them down the wall until I could get to where I could get parallel. And it was excruciating. But I did it 5 or 6 times a day. Now, had I not done that, I probably never would have got the range of motion back. So you got to do it. It felt like running a marathon to get down on the floor, because getting down on the floor and getting up was the hardest part.
I'm sure.
But I did it 6 times a day. And I would hold that position, and it hurt, and I was sweating, but I had to get the range of motion back. So the first thing you do is you get the range of motion back, then you start worrying about strengthening it. Because when it happened, this leg was completely dead. I could not move it. The only way to move it was to physically pick it up and move it around. Because the first thing they said is, well, laying there, they go, can you lift your leg? And for all my life, I could not move it at all. It was like being paralyzed. You were trying and nothing was happening. And it took months to be able to lift my leg sitting to hold it out. It took months to be able to just do that. Then I had to get it strong enough. So after I got it to move, I still couldn't walk on it because if you put any weight on it, it would just collapse.
The weakness.
And so you just have to, and a lot of people haven't moved in a long time. That's what happens. So some people will go for massage therapy to help do that deep
Myofascial
tissue,
release, yes.
to try to break it up, and that hurts.
Oh, I've experienced that, and I had two to three sessions where they would do that. I'll never forget that. It hurts so bad.
You want to cry?
Yes.
Yeah, I dig in there, and
It
that's,
feels like knots, and it just hurts very bad.
yeah, and that's what happens. So, it's just like they tell people as they get older, you got to keep moving, or you'll
do.
stop moving. Well, that's true.
Now, when I was first diagnosed with fibromyalgia, the pain was so debilitating. So, sleep issues, gut issues, all kinds of issues. And then just trying to get out of bed when it feels like a truck has rolled over you. And so in the beginning, I've come a long way, because in the beginning, by the time I would get out of bed, I had to just sit down and just sit for a while because I had no more energy. And I remember some of the clinicians would tell me, well, if you feel that way, then don't move. But then I recognized something, because I feel that everyone has to know their own body. And I recognized that this I feel is costing me way more pain. So I says, okay, I'm going to experiment with something. It's going to be difficult, but I set a goal where I will push myself a little bit each day. I've set a goal that, okay, I'm going to walk this distance, from the bedroom to the dining room to the kitchen, downstairs, just little steps, to just try to see how I would feel. It was hard, but I noticed something. I felt like I started loosening up a little bit. And then I kept doing it to the point where I can work out regularly. I have a lot of limitations, but I'm a lot better than I used to be.
Yeah. Well, it's the same when people work out, especially when they start, oh, I'm dying, I hurt. Well, you're going to think I'm crazy, but the best thing you can do is work out again. Because after a few times, the pain's not as intense. That first time when you first work out really heavy and you're lifting what you think that the world has ended, and your body's being torn from limb to limb.
It sure feels like that, yes.
And people say, I can't work out, I hurt. But you're going to think it's crazy. Back the weight off, work out again. Because it's just the lactic acid and all in your body, and you'll get used to it, and then it won't be so. But I'll tell you now, if I change my workout and I change an exercise or something, you'll be incredibly sore. Your body adapts very, very quickly.
Yes, memory.
So when you hit it with something from another angle or something, all of a sudden you're in pain. Like, well, that was lighter. Why? It's different. It's just you're constantly keeping your body off balance, and it's like, yeah, it hurts, but after a few times it's not quite so bad. But that scares a lot of people, that pain. And my ex-wife, with her fibromyalgia, we found something. It was air pressure that was causing her problem, because we had a bedroom in the basement. You had no idea what the weather was.
Yes.
She'd wake up and say, the weather changed, I'm dying.
You can feel it, the barometric pressure.
So what I did was I actually found a website that had a flow chart of the barometric pressure in Kenosha. I started hurting there, and it wasn't that it went up or down, it's just it moved. And not a little, but there was a pretty good move where it moved half an inch or something in the mercury.
And your tissues feel that.
And that's what triggered it. So when you hear people, a lot of people say, I go to Arizona because of the dry heat for arthritis. The reality is the desert, the air pressure is extremely constant in the desert because there are no fronts, so the weather doesn't change. That's what it is, not so much the heat as that air pressure is constant. And when your joints are so sensitive, that little bit of change in pressure is what triggers. You hear people say, oh, my knee, I know it's going to rain.
Yes.
That's because there's a front coming through, and the mercury's going to move. And so we figured that out. That's what was caused, that was her trigger that would set it off. It wasn't so much what she did, it was that air pressure movement that would set it off. So my point is, you have to experiment and find out what works for you. It's the same thing with homeopathic type remedies. Some people say, I tried that, it's garbage, doesn't do anything. Maybe for you it doesn't, but for somebody else,
it may.
They'll say, and some people say, well, it's all psychosomatic. Well, my opinion on that is, if it works, who cares?
That's true, and many people it has worked for.
Right. So you'll hear something like DMSO or different things in acupuncture, and they say, well, I tried that, didn't work. Well, that doesn't mean it won't work for you. You might try that and say, this was like heaven sent. Where was this my whole life? It's made such a difference. So anything that can help improve is worth it.
That's true, because many years ago, I used to have a really bad problem with migraines. I tried acupuncture. I had 2 to 3 sessions of acupuncture and was migraine-free for many, many years. Then when the fibro diagnosis came along, of course, the headaches and different things. So I've learned how to better manage the migraines. Now, when you were talking about the barometric pressure, I found some apps in the App Store for my iPhone where I can check the pressure. So that's very helpful.
Yeah, and
thank you for sharing
some
that.
people will be like, what do you mean? What would that have to do with anything? And you talk about stuff like that. I have a friend who had just migraines that were just absolutely blinding. And she got the Daith piercing, where they pierced this part of the ear.
I've seen that, yes.
She ended up getting both done. She hasn't had a migraine in 2 years. And you'll hear other people say, well, it doesn't work. Well,
it's helped many people, yes.
The woman who pierced her told her, well, to be honest with you, what you have to really do is go to an acupuncturist and get it marked. So you're right on the spot. She says, because I don't know where it is. But she said 2/3 of the time you can't pierce it then, because it's like on an edge or something. It's not pierceable. So she said, just pierce it. And they talked about how painful it is, most excruciating piercing you'll ever have, and she was sleeping on it in 2 days.
Yes.
And didn't bother her at all. And she was like, oh, because she would get him to where she was throwing up, couldn't go to work for days at a time. Hasn't had one now in a couple years.
I was at a conference when they had those, I think it's pronounced auriculo, those little seeds similar to that that goes in the ear. And I had one of the local business owners who's a chiropractor in town, in fact, Dr. Malloy, and we talked about that very same thing, the seeds. And at this conference, a lot of the attendees tried it, and it really leveled down their pain. So I always tell people, okay, don't knock it till you try it, you know, and if it don't work for you,
But
you know, that's
but,
fine. Try something else.
So you get a date and it doesn't work. Well, you got a piercing. I mean,
Right.
it's not the end of the world. And if it helps,
Right.
great. Is it going to help everybody? No, because rarely does anything help everybody.
It's just going to help some people. Yes.
So you have all these different things, and sometimes well, it gets frustrating because you got to try 4, 5, 6 things before you find something that really works. But my attitude, that's better than just saying, well, the heck with it, I'll live with it. You know, see what you can do. If it can improve the quality of your life, then well, it's worth it.
That's true. Now, you know, September is Chronic Pain Awareness Month, and that's a big month for us in the chronic pain community, as well as May, which is Fibromyalgia Awareness Month. But since it's going to be for September, Chronic Pain Awareness Month, then can you give us any tips of different things that people can do? I know somebody may have knee pain, some may have shoulder, but how does one even get started with a routine?
Well, typically what I tell people is when you start, you want to work out 3 days a week.
Okay.
This idea, we got to work out 6 days a week. It burns people out. Not everybody's geared. Years ago, I had friends who were trainers. This is 30 years ago in Milwaukee, and I was like, well, these people, they pay you, and he goes, well, not everybody's cut out where they have enough drive to work out every day. If they didn't have a commitment to come see me, they wouldn't do it.
Yes.
So I always tell people, you know, the whole secret of less is more. So try to get as much as you can out of as little as you can, and you can always build it up. But so many people start and they burn themselves out, and either burn themselves out or get hurt. And in either case, then you stop.
Okay.
And then how hard is it to start again? And the goals have to be realistic. It's great to say, well, boy, I am going to transform myself into Mr. America in the next 6 months, but that's probably, you get a little older and all. That's not very realistic. So you have to be, it's even with losing weight. People are like, well, these shows and all where people lose all this weight really fast. They never keep it off because those kind of crash things just don't work. So I always ask people, how long did it take you to gain the weight? Oh, years. Well, it's going to take a while to take it off. The idea that, well, it took me 10 years to gain it and I want to take it off in 10 weeks is probably, if your expectations are way out of whack there, everybody wants to see immediate results, and it takes a little while to do that, and you need to be consistent. So the idea, I'm going to go in, I'm going to work out so hard, I'm going to be so sore that I can't get out of bed.
That's not healthy.
No, because chances are after a few times at it, you're going to be like, yeah, this is miserable. I'm not doing this anymore.
I'm not going to do that no more.
So you got to be real and build up to it. So the expectations, that's part of the problem. So many trainers, they want to transform people really quick because that looks good on their portfolio, right? Look who came to me. This is what they look like 3 months ago, and they've lost 50 pounds and all of this. And, well, you must have some great secret, that nobody else has. But most people aren't driven enough to do that, and they'll be hurt, and once they're hurt, they're not coming back, So the idea is it takes time, and you just gotta start easy, and then you can always go further, but it just starts slow and really not getting hurt. That's where, as crazy as it sounds, people see an exercise think it's very simple, but if you don't do it correctly, that's how you get hurt.
Yes, I've been there, done that. Last year, I enrolled in one of those boot camps. When I enrolled in the boot camp, I shared with them what my diagnosis was, and I says, okay, I want to get better fit. I want to do this, but I have limitations. All I ask is that you work with me, and just be a little bit patient. So they